there was a sense of frustration, a sense of anxiety, but also a sense of excitement कि भाई ये IPO हो क्यों नहीं रहा है, right?
Until 28th November, it was not clear that IPO हो रहा है या नहीं हो रहा है. Whatever can go wrong has gone wrong. Not so great year for fintechs to go listed in India.
All credit to the IPO of pulling this off goes to only one person, and that is Upasana.
Anything that the regulator can do can in fact cause an existential issue. How has that been for the two of you to deal with?
It's been crazy. And fintech as a sector, I still see as a sunrise sector. But with this kind of environment now, if you see who's investing in fintech, whether it is private companies, is not the preferred sector for investment. But India needs billions of dollars in investment in fintech.
So if you had to start today in this regulatory environment, would you start it? A fintech company?
I would absolutely start. If you had asked any one of my electrical engineering batch, is Bipin the guy who's going to start a company who will take it to IPO? I don't think so.
You were apprehensive of actually joining Bipin and being part of MobiKwik. Why was that?
When we met, very serendipitously, we went to watch a play at India Habitat.
What was the play called?
What Women Want.
So you're fine.
I was not the organizer.
I would say I had the gas. I need the ignition.
Ignition, and she provided that. Pressure on you. You've had a difficult quarter. With the losses widening quite significantly. Has that changed the way that you think about the business?
We know how to build a scaled and profitable fintech company. So full stop. We know how to do it, and we have done it. But does it mean that the macros will always be the same?
Yeah.
Does it mean that things will not change, or you will not have 1 or 2 quarters up and down? The answer is no.
The song that embodies how you're feeling today about MobiKwik and about life in general.
लक्ष्य तो हर हाल में पाना है.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Young Turks Reloaded podcast. I'm Shireen Bhan. My guests today have an unusual story. They're part of the first generation entrepreneur cohort who decided to start up in India almost 15 years ago. Today, the company that they run is a listed entity, did very well on its listing day, listing at a premium of almost 90%. And of course, since then, we've seen the markets correct, but that is a story that they're going to share with us on where they see MobiKwik in the future. Bipin and Upasana, many thanks for joining us here on Young Turks, and it's great to have you back. And I want to start by talking to you about 18th of December 2024, because that really has been in many ways that milestone moment that you've both been working towards and waiting for. And I want to link this to your comments that was made on one of our programs, Upasana, where there was a sense of frustration, a sense of anxiety, but also a sense of excitement कि भाई ये IPO हो क्यों नहीं रहा है, right? That was a comment that you made saying everybody is getting cleared but not us.
Right. So I think, what they say, that things that you have to work really, really hard for, finally when you achieve them, I think the sweetness of that victory is amazing. And I think that, kudos to all the tech entrepreneurs in India who have gone public recently and also in 2024. But I would say that the journey for us was, I think, far more tumultuous, far more arduous for various reasons. I think some people have also said that, whatever can go wrong has gone wrong from a climate and environment perspective. So I think it was a not so great year for fintechs to go listed in India. And I think many things happened during the year, also ups and downs in the market. So it was therefore a harder sort of journey for us. And, people are talking about it took us 1 year. We filed our DRHP in January and we completed the IPO in December. But, I want to tell you that we were working on the IPO from 21 because we had also attempted once in 21.
Absolutely.
And, we had some bad luck, even though everything that we had done was perfect. so to speak. So this was really, really, a long, long sixer that we were waiting to hit, so to speak. And I can tell you that we were both very happy and excited at the final outcome, because it was I don't have words. Like, it was extremely hard for us, is what I can say.
Yeah.
I want to add something, about what she said in the beginning. I have seen her pull this IPO off in close quarters. Okay. And of course, I've been part of the process as well. But all credit to the IPO of pulling this off goes to only one person, and that is Upasana. And I am not trying to say this just because she's my wife or she's my co-founder. No other person in this kind of environment, in this kind of a space. Please remember, think of OND quarter,
Yeah.
when there was so much bad news
Around 50.
that had come around fintech, around regulation, around
Lending.
earnings,
Yeah.
around digital lending.
Yeah.
So much so, one of the guys we were chasing for
Investors.
giving one of the investors, he didn't even give us a meeting. He said, you guys do this, but BNPL or whatever it is, and, we don't look at this space. He
Yeah.
said, okay, fine. That's not the only business we do. We have a payments business and lending business. Guess what? Until about 45 days into the process, kickstarting of the roadshow, we didn't even get a meeting from that person, that team. And it was just like, we were like, okay, is this happening? Not happening. Because we knew that getting someone like that mean the IPO is going to get done.
Yeah.
And going to be very super successful versus maybe not happening at all. And over a WhatsApp conversation, she pushed that person saying, okay, you at least give us a meeting. You come for lunch tomorrow in BKC or wherever it is. At least I'll give you a very nice lunch.
Huh.
And, we went there for lunch, and that led to a 3.5-hour meeting, which led to a follow-up, another 4-hour meeting. That led to that particular investor leading our IPO. Now, this is what I say, what Upasana can accomplish. And that is the day when I, put my hats off and said, look, I mean, what is impossible? We talk about impossibles every day,
Yeah.
overcoming challenges. But if we can do this in a sector so hard, like so difficult as fintech, then, I think whatever is happening now, it's nothing, right? I mean, we just going to go from strength to strength.
So for you, impossible is nothing. Quite literally, right?
You should hear my motivation playlist.
What is your motivation playlist?
It has an eclectic mix of English, Hindi, and Punjabi, but it has never given
No Kashmiri?
Well, Kashmiri also. It has never give up. It has unstoppable. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. आम जैसे मुंडे ही बड़े बनते हैं, and अपना time आएगा. And like,
this is what
लक्ष्य
daily-
तो पाना है. This is
Daily
like
affirmation.
daily in the morning while taking a jog or while taking a shower. Daily I play it. Daily. I mean, at least I got through the entire sort of hard months of IPO just with. I like music, and it has a power on me, and I can use it to convert my mood and really.
No, but on a serious note, to Bipin's point that it was touch and go, quite literally.
It
You have that very short, limited window. What made you persevere? What made you not give up?
I'll tell you one simple thing. 10th, 11th, 12th were the offer dates for us. Rather, 10th was Anchor, 11th, 12th, 13th December was the IPO. I think until 28th November, it was not clear that IPO ho raha hai ya nahi ho raha hai. So, the last...
Literally the last 18 days.
Yes, and then we knew that after 15 December, it's just
There's no window.
there's no window, right? Like people go for investors go for vacation, etc. And look what has happened in January. So I'm thankful to God. I'm thankful to our team Flash, and I'm thankful to Bipin, my colleague Anand and I. We just persevered, and we pushed each other. I might have got the meetings, but it's a team effort, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's the opener, somebody's the closer. That's sort of how I think about it.
There is a hotel in Mumbai near the airport, right, where we once during this roadshow checked in late night, And then we had to take a flight to Singapore the next day, and we came back the night after. And then we came to the reception, and that lady said, "Didn't you just come in yesterday?" I said, "Yeah, we went from Mumbai to Singapore, and now we are back here."
Back.
Because guess what? We made a pact, like, we're going to stay in Mumbai until the IPO is done. And that's it. And we did it.
But Bipin, I want to go back to the start. As Upasana said, you've had a tumultuous journey when you started in 2009. And there have been many reasons why you probably should not exist today, but you continue to exist. And today you're a listed entity. But I want to go back to your conviction in wanting to start up in 2009. Your family didn't want you to start up. You were the oldest son. You had that responsibility and the baggage of having seen a family business not go through the kind of expectations that you had. The conviction to start up, what made you want to do it?
So firstly, thank you, Shireen, for inviting us here. And I think it's I think more than 15 years later that we are doing the back on Young Turks.
Yes.
And first time we came, we were shooting from an apartment, which was our first office. So it's great to be here, back again, and reliving those days in terms of how we started up. And that was 2011, and I started up in 2009. Look, I mean, I think I was pretty frustrated with what I was doing just in work, and I wanted to make an impact in my life. And I had multiple options. I thought, maybe I should go study MBA. I'm from IIT Delhi, and, a lot of my peers would go do MBA and get jobs in consulting, banking, earn a lot of money, or go do masters, etc. But I had been working for 6-7 years in India. So the path was clear to me, either go do masters. I think that was pretty much it. And that's when, I got an idea. That, all of these things that we are doing with cash, like topping up your phone by going down to the shop. I being the eldest child, I was more responsible, but I was also very lazy because I had 2 younger siblings, and
So send them to recharge your phone.
To recharge my phone. And sometimes when they were not around, my mom would say, "Why don't you go and do it?" I was super irritated, and I think Upasana can attest to it, how I am. So I was like, why is there no website where I can go and do this? And then that's when I realized, and when I looked at data, there is hundreds and millions of people doing this every day.
Yeah.
And I would say, that's not great for productivity, right? Firstly using cash, and secondly, just wasting time.
Yeah.
So that's how the idea of MobiKwik was born. But honestly, someone like me was not the kind of person who you would vote for to start a company. Right? Not
Why
the kind
is
of
that?
person. Look, I mean, if you knew me in college, for example, or in school, I was the most introvert, antisocial, awkward guy you would come across. Good in academics, of course, great in maths.
You made it to IIT Delhi that
Right, IIT, but within IIT also, right? When you get to IIT, there's so many people who are so smart, right? I mean, participating in sports and dramatics and doing whatnot, and I was not one of them at all. And I was not the topper either. So it's not like academically I was the topper. So if you had asked any one of my electrical engineering batch, is Bipin the guy who's going to start a company who will take it to IPO? I don't think so. I don't think they would have voted for me. But when, it came to taking a plunge and doing something and getting that conviction, is just that at that moment you get that conviction, and then you don't worry about what are the resources that you have to pull this off, right? I'd worked for a few years, and being the eldest son, coming from fairly modest backgrounds, like you said, we used to live in a 5-room house. 1-room house, 5 people. 5 people in a 1-room house, like not 1 bedroom, but 1 room. And so coming from there, cracking IIT, getting a job, saving some money, buying my first house, those were significant achievements for me and also for my family.
I would imagine, yeah.
And to give that all up, to say, let's start from zero. To start a company, I think Upasana had a great role to play in it. Of course, when I met her, she's the kind of person, she pushed me into it. But yes, the desire was there in me to do something. And I think that's how it started. And then once it got started, I think then post that, was
No looking back.
No looking back.
Well, we'll talk about the many twists and turns that have happened in MobiKwik's journey in a second. But Upasana, I want to come to you now because you didn't want to get into MobiKwik. And I'll put this in the context of a conversation that I had with Mr. Murthy. When he was starting Infosys, the seed capital came from Sudha Murthy. She was an engineer herself. She was qualified to be part of the business. But he decided that the founders' families will not be part of the business. And today, he believes that he would have done it differently. If he had the opportunity, he would have done it differently. You were apprehensive of actually joining Bipin and being part of MobiKwik. Why was that?
So, two things. Firstly, I want to just say that when he was talking about himself, that, I don't think I could have been a founder. I think he was being too hard on himself. He never had the time to have fun or work on his personality because he was always bogged down with responsibility. So anyway, but I do want to say that when we met very serendipitously, we went to watch a play at India Habitat.
What was the play called?
What Women Want.
So you're fine.
I was not the organizer. But we met serendipitously to a friend who had invited a bunch of us. And I was going to say that even in that first meeting, it was very apparent to me that, this guy is going to do something. He's going to achieve something big. But I didn't know that, my life is going to get intertwined with him. So anyway, we became friends over the course of the next few weeks and months. And it became apparent to me that he had this latent ambition that मुझे कुछ बड़ा करना है, मुझे कुछ करना है. And he was probably not getting the encouragement, or he needed one catalyst, I think, to throw him off.
You were the fire starter.
I pushed him off the cliff. It's like, you have to jump. Like, how much are you going to think about it? You've done everything for your parents, family, ghar hai, enough savings hai. So I think he was 28. I'm like, if you're not going to do this for yourself right now, then what is the point? You won't believe. When I met him, he already had the MobiKwik logo. He already had a website. He already had some junior in IITs helping him code the whole thing. He was just not, converting it from a hobby project to a real life.
So you needed that somebody to just push you to take the plunge.
I would say I had the gas. I need the ignition.
Ignition, and she provided that. But did you have a conversation on when you actually started up? And I would imagine that it's refined over the course of the years on what role each of you would play. How would you demarcate the roles at home versus the roles at work? I mean, what was that like? Were these conscious conversations that happened, or this kind of organically fell into place?
No, so what I wanted to say in continuation with your previous question also, so he was getting started and I was very clear that I have moved back from California just to do my own payment startup. So I'm going to do my thing and you are going to do your thing. Because at that time, our personal equation was also not very clear.
You were not
friends,
dating.
We were just about to start dating. It was all in flux. And I was like, why create so much, chaos? You do your thing, I'm going to do my thing, but you must do your thing. That much I'll keep pushing you for. So he got started. I was still working on my own ideas, etc. And I think few months after getting started, he left his job. Other people that he had started with, they were doing part-timing, and they had that hopes that this will, go somewhere like immediately. But of course, you have to toil very hard.
Yeah.
So when they left and he was doing it alone, like I literally saw, so we were dating by that time. I literally saw this man work for 22 hours every day, where he's doing business development in the day to go and meet the Docomos and the Airtels of the world. He's doing coding in the evening and he's doing customer support in the night and finance in the night. I was like, oh my God, ye to kaise hone wala hai? And I still kept like, okay, I'll just help you as a friend. Like, I'm not jumping into this thing. You must find other people. After I saw his commitment and his respect towards his, work, it's like all in, super all in. Then I realized that why am I being a doofus, right? Like, his idea is MobiKwik. It's a wallet. मैं तो PayPal में wallet ही करके आई हूँ. I know payments. I know risk. And anyways, I was helping him on those points as a friend. So I'm just being stupid in trying to identify a separate idea and not just doubling down on this. And I think that's sort of when
you also decided.
Yes. 6 months after he had started MobiKwik, I finally said, okay, I'm going to do this full time with you now. फिर आगे जो होगा देखी जाएगी.
आगे जो होगा वो देखी जाएगी. And you know, we're sitting here today talking to the two of you as you are now a listed entity. But Bipin, you know, coming back to the question that I asked Upasana, was there a conscious conversation around how you would structure lives at work and outside of work as well?
So we were not married then,
Yeah.
but we were living together. We had started living together, and our dining table in the drawing room, that was our workplace. So it was basically about getting from the bedroom to the dining table and starting the work. I think we split that organically. I don't think there was any conscious conversation. It was more like 50-50. You know, if I'm making breakfast, she's making dinner. Things like that. But I think we were super kind of efficient. If I go back and see, you know, as like we're not even 30, so our needs were not that many. Our chores were also not that many.
Right.
So we could focus 80% of our effort and time
On building MobiKwik.
on building MobiKwik. And so I think that was a big plus and helped us kind of, you know, do these things in a way where even if you fight, which were not uncommon, right? I mean, of course, if you're living together and working together, that's part of the ritual, I would say. But you know,
Ritual.
yes, I mean, you have to let it
Yes,
out
yes.
in terms of you're living with a person and you're also building something in terms of what you're doing is not right, what you're doing is this, we should do it this way or that way, or you know, something about food, right? So I think those things we overcame because we had already become deep as friends, to the extent that, you know, these fights couldn't kind of separate us in any way, right? We
Right.
knew that the fight is going to end,
Yeah.
and you're going to ultimately have a silent period followed with a
Who breaks the silent period? Who makes up? Who's the
well, I
first
do.
to
I
make
think
up?
I would like to say I do.
Does he?
Well, I don't know about that. I think he speaks only for, you know, in the business and professional setting, you will not imagine he's an introvert. But at home, it's very hard to get him to talk. So I'm not sure. But theek hai. If you want to take brownie points.
Okay, fine. So she's given that to you, Bipin. But you know, I remember you. I think it was you who made a statement that the two missions that you're on is building MobiKwik into a profitable
staying married.
venture and staying married. Which one is harder?
I would say, you know, both of them require, you know, controlling your emotions, having patience, and enjoying the journey rather than, you know, hoping for some kind of an outcome. And that's what has kept these two missions alive, because just like in building MobiKwik,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we had so many ups and downs. You know, at some point you wonder, you know, is it really worth it, right? What you're doing every day, waking up, so much stress, trying to solve this problem and then trying to solve another problem. I don't think we had that level of, you know, fights or disputes, at least personally, ever. But yeah, I mean, you know, work seeps into your personal life and creates a kind of subconscious stress,
Yeah.
which we later realize that, you know, these tempers or these conversations or these arguments are resulting from some latent stress coming from work rather than, you know, something that you don't like about the person. And then you go back to knowing that, you know, this person is your best friend ever, right? Who understands you probably better than you do yourself, because she has seen you, you know,
Through
go
all of your
through
phases.
this,
Yeah.
and go through all the highs and lows. And I think that is where, you know, I think it has kept us alive together.
No, but you know, and this is an important issue, and not just because people end up working together, but as couples, you know, as you navigate the many challenges that you encounter in life, at work, and so on and so forth. I mean, the two of you have an even more challenging task because you're working together and living together. But what do you believe? you're mindful of? What do you think keeps a relationship healthy, strong, robust? Friendship clearly is core to that. But, share with us what it's taken for you to build this relationship.
I think that one thing has been easy for us, regardless of the challenges in life, whether in personal or professional. I think we have a very simple and similar value system. So I think that keeps us together, because we could fight like cats and dogs over, which sofa to buy, as an example, or not. But on simple things, on ethics, on responsibility, on how you live your life, I think we have the same sort of moral code, so to speak. So that keeps us together, because we know we'll think exactly the same way on this. I think mutual respect, and the fact that, we've both independently achieved a lot on our own in our personal lives, I think that has also helped us. But what you're asking, creating demarcations, creating boundaries, like in terms of what I do now for the last few years, I've been focusing more on external facing thing, investors, finance, PR, and I don't get into any of the product and business decision making that he has been involved in. But all of this realization has come, I think, after the first 7-8 years. The first 6, 7, 8 years,
You did everything.
We did everything together, and then we realized, we got married a few years after we started, and we had our kid 7 years after we had started MobiKwik. I think that was the inflection point when we realized that we can't be coming home at 9:30, 10, because we realized that during the pregnancy itself that we'll have to change our ways of working.
Yeah.
I think I became very efficient with my time, and I think he also realized that, when you don't have a kid that you have to go back to, you can be in the office till 10, and you're also having a jolly good time with your colleagues, and you're having pizzas for dinner, but that doesn't scale well further, right? So I think after that, we started becoming more conscious about how not to bring work stress to home, how not to bring work arguments to home, and how to cherish the time that we have at home as a couple, as a family, with our kid, with our parents, with our siblings, etc. I think a lot of that evolution has happened in the last 5 to 7 years, where we try to stay actually as far away. In fact, in the office previous to the current office, our seating was also very far away. I don't want to see you all day.
Was that conscious? So you don't have work lunches together?
No.
Absolutely
Never.
not.
Never.
Never.
I don't recall the last time only the two of us had a lunch together at work.
In fact, almost always, whenever we want to, so our office is very close to a mall. So often we step away to get a coffee or salad or something, almost always we'll like to go for lunch or coffee with one of our colleagues who we want to hang out with socially, or we have some work matter to discuss, to chalo saath mein kar lete hain, like that.
So that separation, I guess you require your space as well to be able to work on the things that you want to work on. But let's talk about where you find yourselves with MobiKwik today, and what the future holds. Today you're a listed entity. How's life changed for you? And I'll ask you this in the context of the fact that you had a great listing. From the peak that you touched in December of over 600 rupees, it's down 50%, but the markets have also corrected quite significantly. Does that now put pressure on you? You've had a difficult quarter, with the losses widening quite significantly. Has that changed the way that you think about the business?
Not really. If you see, one of the first things I did when I knew for certain that we are getting listed is I talked to one of the very well-respected entrepreneurs based in Silicon Valley. He's also an Indian founder. And I asked him, how has your psychology changed since your company got listed? And one thing he advised me, and he said, one thing you follow every day, don't look at the stock price. Yeah. And so what he meant is, and what I understood is, see, these markets and even I would say BFSI sector, macros, what's happening in US, these are beyond our control. So I cannot control all of it. What I can only control and we can control is our business. And that business has scale to a level where we achieved certain numbers. Last year, we became profitable. And by the way, we did it since 21 was the last fundraise. We did it without raising any additional funds. And we got to almost 890 crores of revenue and some 30-40 crores of EBITDA. So we know we can do it. We know how to build a scaled and profitable fintech company. So full stop. We know how to do it. And we have done it. But does it mean that the macros will always be the same? Does it mean that things will not change or you will not have 1 or 2 quarters up and down? The answer is no. And I think we are very, very bullish on MobiKwik, on what we can build and what we are building today. Because just I was discussing before our conversation, is that the opportunity of digitization in finance, what have we done and achieved in India? It is nothing. It is not even single-digit percentage. Whether you talk about UPI, whether you talk about wallets, whether you talk about stock market investing, whether you talk about digital lending, it's all in single-digit percentage penetration. Whether you talk about insurance. So all we have to do is keep building it, but keep building it the way we have done in the past, which is keep costs under control, be efficient, and now, like we were discussing, now with AI in the mix, you can be super efficient in terms of how you build your business. So I think the platform and the foundation is there. I see the IPO. Many people think IPO is like the culmination of something.
No, it's this actually could potentially be the start of a whole new chapter.
We didn't sell a single share in the IPO. Neither did any one of our shareholders. That tells you about what they think about the future of MobiKwik. I will not comment on things like what the valuation is or what the valuation was or what the stock price is today. But these are the people who have seen us perform over so many years, overcome challenges and demonstrate resilience to getting us here. So now, we have 500 crore plus that we've raised in the IPO, which is in the bank, which we didn't have. So I would like to think the future is bright and we keep building.
You talked about you being the external face and dealing with investors and so on and so forth. Has your life changed more than Bipin's? Because he's working on the product side of the business. He's working on the tech side of the business. For you, has life changed, Upasana, post the listing?
Well, yes and no. I think that in the process of doing the IPO, I think I've become a complete investment banker, equity research analyst, and equity salesperson all combined into one in the last couple of years. So, not really. I think I've found the right balance in terms of how to present the company, the strengths, and where we are going. Without, I mean, if there's anything you can say about Bipin and Upasana and also the brand MobiKwik is that we are an understated brand and both of our personalities are as such. So I think I always believe that let's do it. Let's do something that creates an amazing impact and then, people will be able to applaud it on their own. There is no point in tom-tomming yourself or what you're gonna do. Let's do it now first. Like if you win a race, then people will automatically know you don't need to do anything about it. So I think to that extent, I think we'll continue just keeping our heads down.
That's unusual, isn't it? In an era where you have press releases coming out, even, for companies that are pre-revenue today. I mean, sometimes do you feel like maybe you need to change track, or has there ever been the temptation to change track?
Well, I mean, of course, we are, in the ecosystem. So we've seen how the India startup ecosystem has also evolved over the years. And, I can say that we do know that you develop all these muscles in the company. You've developed a product muscle. You developed a sales muscle. I don't think that we have developed the penultimate, PR or marketing muscle. But even when we do it at the highest level of quality, I'm not sure I would still want to do it in that manner. I think it has to still be more substance over quantity for us.
People don't understand what it actually takes to not just build a business, but to cross the kind of milestones that you've been able to cross, to go through the kind of challenges that you've been able to go through in a regulated sector, in a sector where you are not just dealing with the government, but you're dealing with the Reserve Bank of India. And anything that the regulator can do can, in fact, cause an existential issue for people like you. And I don't think people realize that. And, I had an interesting conversation with the Kamath brothers at Zerodha, and they were talking about the same thing. They said, with one stroke of a pen, the regulator can shut you down, essentially. How has that been for the two of you to deal with?
Oh, it's been crazy. And I had mentioned this to some of the relevant people here when I was attending a meet related to fintech industry growth prospects in Delhi a few weeks back. Is that, when you're sitting here in Delhi or Bombay and we are passing regulations and or taking action, we think positive and negative, we don't realize that the people who look at companies like us, whether it is private or public, how they think about these decisions and what they understand and comprehend, because it becomes like a pretty big black box where the clear conclusion for a lot of people is maybe the regulators and the government don't want fintech.
Which they've clarified, to try and send out the message that no, that's not the case. That
but
we do
the
want
actions
to
that take place, actually point to the contrary, right? For many of them, and then it's hard to justify that actions are against certain entities only, and it's not against a particular sector. But the media blow up that results from that. See, somebody sitting in Singapore, I met, a very, very big Swiss bank. We were talking to them earlier in our roadshow. I spent 1 hour with that analyst, a very well-respected analyst, just discussing what does the regulator want. And it was not about MobiKwik. He didn't spend 1 minute on MobiKwik. And I had to educate him, saying that this is what is happening. It's because I think there is a gap in the communication, and that gap, has to be closed. Because fintech as a sector, I still see as a sunrise sector. But with this kind of environment now, if you see who is investing in fintech, whether it is private companies, is not the preferred sector for investment. But India needs billions of dollars in investment in fintech to make the dream of truly inclusive finance happen in India. It's just we have not even scratched the surface.
So if you had to start today in this regulatory environment, would you have started a fintech company?
I would absolutely start because I have like 10 different ideas.
You have the heart and the appetite for pain.
No, I have not just that. I think, you also learn and evolve. I think the ecosystem has also learned. I have also learned along with it. See, a lot of the innovation, if it's not regulated, there is a very thin line between what you should do and what you shouldn't do.
So that's the point, right? So if the regulator is coming in to say that, look, we want to put the guardrails in place so that innovation doesn't run far ahead of regulation, and that's always a catch-up that's that's on, whether in India or globally as well. So you understand the regulator's predicament, but as an entrepreneur, how do you then go around navigating your business?
You built your business on a particular kind of arbitrage, let's say, in the world of finance. And in the world of finance, there are hundreds of arbitrages. You can build a business and make huge amounts of a huge business very quickly. And then suddenly the regulator comes in saying that this is not what we meant, or this is not explicitly allowed. I think that becomes a challenge because, look, you've invested money, you've put investors' money, your own time and effort into building something, and suddenly one day you wake up and say this is not allowed. I think now it's happening, a much closer dialogue in terms of what is allowed, how to do things, etc. Especially from a fintech point of view, is now happening, but it wasn't happening few years back. And I think that is where you would have found that many of the companies had missteps, and that means loss of capital and loss of trust, for example.
Reputation, which is crucial in this business.
I mean, we haven't spoken about it, but I want to tell you that I think we met maybe 100 investors in our roadshow in October, November last year. In typically all these meetings are 1 to 1.5 hours. In most of these meetings, first we were defending
the sector,
fintech India. Then we are defending, our segments of business within that. And then we are defending our own numbers and our competitive position. maximum amount of time we had to first defend this aspect only, that fintech industry in India is only going to grow. Yes, it will be a regulated market, but innovation, regulation, and actually adaptability are the key to success here. Because if you take the analogy of the movie industry, a one-hit wonder cannot succeed in fintech India, because that one product could become irrelevant, or it could not be allowed, or part of it could not be allowed. So you have to keep building, more and more things. And if you have a few things going for you, it doesn't matter that regulation changes something in one, regulation changes something. You have to be able to keep adapting.
So you have to realize that there are very few listed fintechs in India.
Yeah.
And the understanding of technology in finance, at least in public sector, is technology companies who provide solutions to banks.
Yes.
Which is a completely different world, right?
Right.
Which is more tech fin and more tech or ITES or BFSI, whatever you want to call it. Fintech like ours and a few others, there's hardly anyone listed. And the reason for that is also because there is very, very clear lack of comprehension, understanding about business models, the future. I think certainty of business model is also something that public market investors don't want to take a risk with.
No, and so that brings me to the question: when you were doing the road shows, and now of course you're already listed, but the question marks on the sector, the question marks on visibility as far as what you're going to be able to do in terms of performance. Will you be profitable? Will the profitability be consistent or not? I mean, how do you respond to that today, Upasana?
So 2-3 things. I think A, we had to show the track record, and B, we had to say that look, in payments, now we've become the largest wallet. Look at our growth last year and the last 18 months almost. In every 12-month period, we have grown more than 3x in payments. And unlike other players in payments, we are growing profitably. And in fact, our contribution margin is also improving. And then after we have this payments base and we have 2-3 products within payments, we are also trying to scale up in UPI with innovative products instead of basic, UPI, like a RuPay card and a credit card on UPI. So that kind of thing. So we were trying to convince people on the payments growth, and look how much money we are making just in payments. So some of these mutual fund or domestic investors who are very wary of the distribution of financial products that we do, but mainly credit products. And they were like, oh, well, India is going through a cycle.
Yeah.
So, lending is going to be on a low mark. Yeah. So you won't be able to do this. So then we had to explain to some people that just look at how much we are doing in payments. And we've grown 3x.
Yeah.
If I grow this 2x, then again, I will be able to continue to be profitable. I don't have to be dependent on distribution of credit products at all, because this is how I'm building the product.
So this diversification is going to be crucial for you, isn't it, Bipin? As we talked about, I mean, today what we are seeing is that there is a significant consumption slowdown, which is being reflected in your business, in your numbers as well. So this diversification of creating a suite of solutions and a suite of revenue streams, this is going to be crucial for you.
Absolutely. So the way we think about this is whether it is a user or a merchant, and we have 167 million users and 4.5 million merchants. What do they need? They need first a payment solution, ability to pay conveniently, safely, instantly. Second, if they need money, they should be able to get it. It could be a secured product. It could be an unsecured loan. It could be a credit card, whatever it is. Third is, it's not just that they need loans. They also have money in their savings account, which probably is yielding 3-4% return. So they also need an easy way to manage that money or earn returns, better returns on that money. And not everyone is very smart to directly invest into stock market, although that market is picked up quite a bit in 3 years. But now you would see given what's happening right now, a lot of fingers would be burnt, and a lot of retail investors.
There is a lot of pain, especially in the small and mid caps.
Small and mid caps, and a lot of retail investors will vanish, and they will not come back for a long time again. Simply because if you see only your portfolio going up, you're not comfortable with the volatility. You should not be investing in stock market. But could there be other solutions? There could be other solutions, like you have FDs which give you 8-9%. Of course, you have mutual funds which can moderate and smoothen out your kind of return curves. You have gold, which is of course return so much. So what we're trying to do is at MobiKwik is cover your financial life from all 3 aspects: pay, borrow, and earn. And the mass that we are appealing to is not necessarily living in Delhi or Bombay or tier
Yeah.
1, tier 2,
Yeah.
because really, that person is like already super educated and has so many options. It's a person who's probably living in tier 3, 4 town, city, who today, of course, has access to internet, has access to education, but they don't have the means to go to a different place and
Yeah.
earn higher returns or get loans, etc. So for them, we solve the problem of access and distribution with our multiple supply side partners on the MobiKwik app. And if you think about it like that, DSA is like the age-old,
Yeah.
decades-old model in
Model,
India.
yeah.
We are just digitizing it for the next 10, 20 years. And that's where, we believe we are very, very confident in a long-term vision and what we are executing towards the products we are building. Of course, it will come with some volatility, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I will not deny that there will be some times we'll have things which, in the market are not under our control. But as long as we are focused on the long term, I think we'll do okay.
Well, speaking about the long term as well as some of the measures that you've decided to take in the medium term, and I want to talk about the e-rupee launch that you've done, because this is something the RBI is betting very big on, which is the CBDC side of the thesis that they're pushing. But how do you see this, and why did you believe that you wanted to do this, or you have a right to win in this?
So I was invited along with a few others back in April by RBI to have a discussion on CBDC being open, e-rupee being opened up to non-banks. Earlier, it was allowed only for banks for the first year.
Right.
Because it's very easy for banks to do it. Like, you already have the person's savings account. You can just convert it into cash the way you're withdrawing
Right.
from ATM. But clearly, as we have seen in many sector after sector, ultimately the regulator realizes that maybe the non-banks could
the
do
ones who will.
could do a better job in terms of experience. So we literally did it in a matter of months. We executed end to end with our partners, RBI, NPCI, and Yes Bank, who's our partner. So CBDC, in short, is digital cash, and I think cash in digital form has many advantages. It's as good as physical cash,
Okay.
but it's digital.
Huh.
I can pay you just like I pay from my physical wallet.
Right.
A note comes out
Right.
and goes in your physical wallet. Same way from my MobiKwik account or from my MobiKwik wallet, which has a 100 rupees note, I can give it to you. It can go and sit in your 100 rupees MobiKwik wallet. That transaction is not part of the banking.
Okay.
So it is not known to any banks. No one can trace it. It's fully anonymous. Just like any note which is out there, the only person who knows about that note is RBI.
Yeah.
Same way, this digital note is known only by RBI. So I think it has all the advantages of cash.
It has all the advantages of cash, except that it's digital. So, what do you think will get people to change the behavior with respect to using physical cash to digital cash? I mean, are you seeing
One of
anything-
the big things we don't realize is, why do people still use cash if you can pay you digitally?
GST नहीं देना.
Yes.
For whatever reason,
Huh.
you don't want the transaction to be traced.
Right.
I will not go into the reasons of why you don't
Sure.
want the transaction to be traced.
Yeah.
Second is that any digital payment system has a settlement mechanism, still has a failure system.
Right.
No digital payment system is 100% successful all the time,
Right.
which includes UPI.
Right.
So even if I pay you 99%, 99.5%, it will succeed, but 0.5% it may fail. And that's when you see, for example, you were talking about Mahakumbh, and a lot of people, why digital is not working there, or there's so much network congestion, because if 100 people are trying to
Yeah,
pay you,
yeah.
then you can't even keep track of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you were getting 100 rupees notes
Right.
from 100 people, take one
Yeah.
note, second note,
Yeah.
and you got all of them. So cash is like that, and digital cash is like that. So either you have it or you don't have it. So if I pay to you, you will, if you see it in your app, you already got 100 rupees. Nothing else to be done. Same way, for anyone who's
So while the regulator is pushing this as a product, what about the income tax department? Because this does bring into question the issue that you raised, the positive of non-traceability, but that could be a concern as far as the income tax department is
So there are
concerned.
other advantages. So I'll come to that, but there's other advantages. See, it is digital. It's like we had this joke about note having a chip, if you remember.
Yes.
So it can actually be a note with a chip. in the sense that you can program it.
And this is
for
not a
certain end
meme.
use. No, I'm not talking about a meme. I can give you a 100 rupees note, for example, like in direct benefits transfer. I can give you a money which can only be used for buying LPG, which can only
Yeah.
be used
Yeah.
to pay electricity, which is
Correct.
today not possible.
Correct.
So I think there are several programmability advantages that you can control the end use case. Anything that you can do on a blockchain, like a crypto, like a Bitcoin or Ethereum, all the systems people have built on top of them, they can be built on top of CBDC, and that is the power that can be created. We have not seen anything yet. But about the traceability, look, I mean, there is so much cash being withdrawn. If you don't want cash, you can just take away all the ATMs. People will not be able to withdraw cash, but it's not going to happen, right? Because people do need it. And I think it's better for the government and the regulator to realize that cash is going to stay. So in fact, the motto for CBDC is not cash less. It is less cash. So which means basically it's cash, but it's in digital form.
Yeah. Upasana, since we're talking about future bets and future opportunities, as you look at the landscape evolving today, and I remember you said that, the marketplace expects us to focus on the competition, but we want to focus much more on the customer. We're obsessed with the customer, not obsessed with the competition. So how do you see the landscape evolving? How do you look at competition? How do you look at what else you can do or be for the customer?
So I think one thing we've seen in the last 10-15 years is that there's been a lot of digitization for finance in India. But most of that digitization has helped people like you and me, who I think are, top 100, top 150 million Indians. And that's where all the private banks and, NBFCs have innovated. So that really is not playing out in terms of finance reaching the tier 2, tier 3 Indians, whether it is a user or a small merchant. So for example, Policy Bazaar has done so well in terms of insurance distribution. But I can see that in my user base, they are not reaching to most of those users because the earnings of my user is probably not such high that the premiums will be in thousands of rupees. Right? So when we think about finance and we think about democratizing financial products, payments is like the least common denominator. And so we know now that, 400 million Indians are transacting digitally using UPI, wallet, their smartphone, etc. So that we continue to double down and grow on. But after that, what is there? There is, distribution of access to credit. There is access to insurance. There is access to investment products.
Yeah.
And in all of these, there will always be people, who are super smart. They can get a financial advisor, or their bank will help them invest in the right things or use the right products. But for the masses, people who are earning 40,000 rupees, 60,000 rupees per month, we see that there is a huge gap. Even if they have taken credit at some point, they have a decent credit score, in all likelihood, due to various procedural requirements, they will not get. And salaried people still have an advantage. But interestingly, most of India is, self-employed, so not salaried. So self-employed में finance में बहुत challenge है. So our focus is, given that we have such a large user base and also small merchant base, we first connect with them over daily life payments, whether we are enabling the merchant to accept payments or we are enabling the user to make the payments. Now, after that, after looking at their KYC, their profile data, etc., we are trying to now diversify in terms of giving them access to the right investment products. So, for example, my user is not so savvy, like they can go to a Zerodha and grow and, figure out how they want to invest their money in, stocks and options, etc. So, the products have to be super simple and they have to be fairly risk-free because they will not be able to appreciate the risk and reward. So that's sort of where we are trying to go. That can we work with the OEMs or the financial institutions, banks, insurance companies, mutual fund companies, and can we bring these very super simple products onto our app?
So I think the SEBI chief used the term the sachayization of financial products across different classes, asset classes you were talking. I mean, she was talking in the context of equities and mutual funds and so on and so forth. Is that really the next wave of both innovation as well as growth, Bipin, that you see?
Yes, so absolutely. I think ticket size is critical because ultimately what happens is if you have someone sitting a few hundred kilometers from a big city, how do you create trust? Can you convince them to put 10,000 or 20,000 or 1 lakh rupees into some kind of product, investment product? The answer is no, right? So you have to start small. Even if you have to put money in a mutual fund or a fixed deposit, or even as simple as gold, right? I mean, for example, everyone in India buys gold.
Yeah.
But how do you buy gold, right? I mean, if you know, a lot of people have a deposit scheme running with their local jeweler,
Yeah.
where they're depositing 100 rupees or 200 rupees every day or every week and saving up for gold. And it carries risks. You don't know if the jeweler is going to stay there or not stay there. Same thing is there. You're giving money to somebody who's saying, I'm putting this money in your bank branch going to yield 6-7%. So there is a lot of lack of education and lack of access about whether these things can be available on an app. Can you put 100 rupees or 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees in an FD, which earns 8-9%? Can you put 100 rupees to buy gold every day at today's price? Right? Same thing with mutual funds. Can you buy, like now, I think you can buy up to 250 rupees. You can do a SIP. So this really helps the last mile customer with the lower ticket size and lower appetite to cross that bridge and do their first investment. And once they start seeing the fruits of that, then, they will start investing and they will start saving. But I would argue that this still creates only the foundation. Because above this, what is lacking in India in a big way in finance is advice. And advice in finance is what do I say? Thanks to internet, thanks to YouTube, all kinds of advice. You'll find 50% saying this, 50% saying do sip karo, 50% saying sip mat karo.
But also the regulators cracking down on advice, so to speak, especially as far
and
as
that's
YouTube,
where
etc.
that's where I think there is currently, for example, overarching, there is no regulation. And also overarching, I think it makes people maybe take wrong decisions, right? And a lot of the people who are marginal, if they end up taking wrong decisions, they actually, you put money in this stock and suddenly, the stock collapses and you lose money. So I think there's a lot of innovation left to solve for that. And
Is that a space that you're going to look at?
That's definitely a space, now with, one is being human and being biased. And the other thing is, let systems do it. And age-old portfolio constructions and your financial life, if an AI were to construct it, how would it construct it to your best benefit? Now that's a problem that's definitely unsolved.
Is that a problem you want to solve?
Definitely a very interesting problem that keeps me awake. And when I keep hearing about the advances that are coming and the fact that now EA is becoming cheaper and cheaper, for sure it's a space that we are definitely looking at.
So, you had your Swadesh moment when you decided to come back to India, give up the California dream, so to speak, and move to India. As you look at India today, and so much has changed, so much has opened up. What does India today stand for you, from your perspective?
I think India today is, Hong Kong was 15 years ago, where the whole world, wanted to come. And I still know that, in the Western world, there are centers where there's a lot of innovation happening. But I think it's that one market. We spoke about in fintech or in startups, there's still more ease of business required. There's still more relaxation of regulations required. But think about it. Such a large consumer base, so much opportunity available because most people have not yet had access to basic products and services that the tech infra can offer them. So I think it's an amazing time to work in India. If I were a founder who's starting up today, I would want to start in, India. It's an amazing place. In fintech. And it might take me longer to reach 100 million ARR. And it might be far more interesting and, more obstacles along the way. But it will still be a more interesting place to work.
I would say definitely it shouldn't take that long now if you start in fintech, because the foundations have been laid. I think the digital rails that have been laid around finance in the last 10-15 years, since you can argue we were early, right? But now what is the ecosystem where you start, and if you identify a problem in finance that you need to solve, you can pretty much do it. But the other thing is also the market has deepened quite a bit. So to think of India as one market is the biggest mistake anyone can do, because there is this Gurgaon and Golf Course Road and Mumbai, whatever,
that's
South
not India.
Bombay, and that's also India, but
But
it's
it's not all of India.
it's a slice of India.
Yeah.
And then there are like this, there are smaller towns, and then there's of course villages. So there are several slices of India. I would argue that there is opportunities to build for each one of them independently as well. You could build for a Gurgaon, and you can build a decently large company, which you would have seen in some of the other spaces.
So build for niches is what you're saying. Will continue.
I think you can break it down and build sizable companies across these segments, as long as you are, and that has to be the future, because ultimately you can't build everything for everyone.
No, and that's not where the profit, I would imagine, will lie, in attempting to build everything for everyone. But and again, I want to understand the competitive landscape from the two of you, because you also said that you prefer to stay under the radar and let your work do the talking, so to speak. You're not really that big on marketing, etc. The question being asked is, how many is too many? Fintech or tech fin companies in India, how many is too many? Bipin, I want to start by asking.
So TechFin, I would say TechFin, there is still a lot of space, and a lot of people can come in, because I would say as technology company building for banks and being a solution provider, there is endless opportunity now, especially with AI, how the world of finance and banking is going to change. But when you look at fintech, who's the last large fintech who was born last 2 years, 3 years? Actually, pretty much no one, right? Everyone is pre-COVID, most of them. And so the investors have already given you the message with their purse strings, which are closed for anything which is happening in fintech. So I would argue country as large as India should not be in this situation. There should be a lot more money. There should be a lot more money.
Banks. Why shouldn't we have 100 banks?
India as a country needs far more many fintechs, far more investment into what's going to, because the world of fintech is not just one world. It's finance, it's technology.
Yeah.
And now with AI, you put it all together. What can you get? Your imagination is the only constraint you have. So I think there's
room for more.
There is huge job. Otherwise, I wouldn't be more bullish today on MobiKwik than I was when I started. Right? And I have done it now for 15 years. So you should say that you should be content. You've done IPO. You must be very satisfied. But no, I will give you one simple example. On MobiKwik app, do you know that you can actually check the bank statement of every single bank that you have and categorize each and every transaction using the account aggregator framework that we have. And we are the largest in that space for PFM. We have almost like close to 40 lakh customers who are using this. What they do, all they do is come on the app and see what transaction they have done and categorize it. So simple. And they get a bank statement just at the click of a button.
Yeah.
It's a very simple thing.
Yeah.
But I think everything that is happening in finance in India is now at a 10x, 100x scale compared to even a few years ago. Now, I'm not talking about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Compared to 5 years ago, pre-COVID, things are happening at 10x, 100x level. Now, what will happen in the next 5 and 10 years? Solutions may not be the same. And I think innovation is the key. New solutions. We talked about CBDC. We talked about account aggregator. We talked about finance.
Yeah.
I think the opportunity is endless.
Banking aspirations, as and when that opens up, if at all, at some point it opens up?
So I would say never to anything. Because whether MobiKwik itself will be just a bank, I don't think so. But what makes sense in the scheme of things for us to provide certain solutions to our customers, never say never.
Never say never. Upasana, I want to get into this question with you, because I think we still have a dearth of female founders in this country. You're one of the very few, and you're one of the very, very few in the fintech space. What has that been like for you? Walking into a room which probably still consists of only men in suits. What's that been like for you? What is it that you would like to tell women who are looking at entering this space?
Anything is possible, and you can't let such constraints or soft sort of environmental factors stop you from what you think you can achieve. I mean, it's true, whether you're trying to be a founder, whether you're trying to be a pilot, whether you're trying to be Shireen, I mean, there's always a first. And if you will be a pioneer in something, you will have to work a little bit extra to prove yourself. And I think that's what it has been. I think now I can tell you that I've been doing this for many years, so now it's easier for me to get the right level of respect, and also I'm able to charm people with my personality. But I think in the early years,
I agree.
in the early years, it results in self-doubt, and you think twice that can I do this, And then
you also feel pressured. I remember you saying once that you went into a meeting right before you were actually going into your C-section, into delivery, because did you feel compelled to prove a point and hence have to do that? Because there's been pushback from women saying that, look, this also puts the burden of expectations on other women of having to perform at that kind of level. Different life stages.
So firstly, the incident you said is not really a true incident.
No?
My C-section was planned on a Saturday and I was working till Friday, but that was by choice because, I think I had a comfortable pregnancy. I worked very hard through it, but I think that's how I liked it. I like to be active and upbeat. And so it was a choice. It was not forced on me. But yeah, I mean, I will say that we should not create crazy expectations. There are times when you have to give 200% to your work, and you need to have a support system to help you in those situations, especially if you are also a working mother. But there will be times when your personal life needs you 200%. So I found that balance where I will move heaven and earth. When I had to do the IPO, I would move heaven and earth. I was in Mumbai for Monday to Tuesday. Tuesday night, I would fly back because Wednesday there was Bombay elections, so chutti thi. So I was at home with my kid. And Thursday morning, again, I was on a flight back to Mumbai. And Friday night, I was again back for the weekend. So, you do all those kinds of crazy things, but you have to know, that you have to cherish your personal life. Also, I think it is not possible. I meant to say, I don't think there is any difference in being a female or a male founder. The stress levels and the responsibilities, expectations are equally high. I think it has a little bit to do with your personal home setup and social conditioning as to how much extra load is there on you.
Yeah.
Because of
it helps that he shares the load.
Yes, it does help.
Of course I do. But I want to add something. I want to say something which is not very well known, that being a woman entrepreneur, being a female entrepreneur, when you're sitting in meetings in a roadshow for IPO, guess what? How many women you meet?
Nobody.
Zero.
Yeah.
Okay. And so while you may say everything is, of course, it's based on merit and of the company that you're building and the business you're building, but it is hard to do that and it's hard to achieve that. And with that, Upasana has actually, having led the IPO, being the face of the IPO for MobiKwik, and done this and being on those one-on-one chats and fights with every particular person who was involved in this process. I think she's broken a glass ceiling, which I hope inspires more women to say that we can start a company and we can take it to IPO.
I certainly hope so. Since you're talking about affirmations in your playlist, end with the song that embodies how you're feeling today about MobiKwik and about life in general.
Oh my God, ये तो मैंने सोचा नहीं था.
भाई अब कर दो.
Oh my God.
Come on, Bipin, help her.
कोई बताओ. अच्छा. लक्ष्य तो पाना ही था.
हाँ तो गाना तो गाओ.
हाँ यही रास्ता है तेरा, तूने यही पाना है. हाँ यही रास्ता है तेरा. I forgot.
Share the load.
लक्ष्य तो हर हाल में पाना है.
And what is the Lakshya for MobiKwik? A year down the line, where do you believe we will see you?
Well, hopefully far more relaxed, far, hopefully bigger business, better business, and, having even stronger and bigger ambition for the future than we have today.
What is the one thing about him that people don't know? And the one thing that you respect and admire about him the most?
One thing about him that people don't know. Well, he's a pretty damn good cook. He loves grilling all kinds of non-veg. And I think it could have been a reason that he decided that, we should, that I should get married to him, because I come from a Kashmiri
Yes.
family. And the joke is that I prefer vegetarian food, but he's very happy to go to all my, aunties and uncles' houses.
And have the nenbat.
Yes. All the Rogan Josh, all the non-veg items that he can eat. So that's, he's a big foodie.
Yeah.
And I think if he's more relaxed, maybe he'll, start some fine,
Fine
restaurant.
dining.
Yes.
That's interesting. And what do you respect and admire about him the most?
I think that when he puts his mind to something, it's very, very hard to get him,
To give up.
to give up. I persuaded him to not start riding motorcycles and not to buy one. And I told him midlife crisis ho raha hai tumhe and all kinds of things I tried. But this man didn't give up. So like from his Xth birthday to X plus 1th birthday, he's like, इस बार तो मैं ले ही रहा हूँ, and you are buying it for me.
So did you buy him one?
I did.
What did you buy him?
What do you have? What do you have?
It's
He has a
it's
Ducati.
Acha, you asked him what you bought him. So you have a Ducati.
Yes.
Midlife
I have a
crisis.
Ducati. I spent 365 days writing an application to her. And I had to convince not just her, but my entire family.
So midlife crisis or no midlife
Not
crisis?
midlife crisis. I think, I want to explore multiple things. I play football. I ride a bike. That's pretty much it.
That's and the one thing that people don't know about her.
I think people probably know this, but maybe the world of business doesn't know that well that, she comes across this very strong personality.
Huh.
Who's pretty, she's like force of nature. She
Yes.
comes across
Yes.
like that. But what people don't realize is at heart, she's very, very, inside, she's very, very deeply emotional. And she cries a lot.
Really? I would never have thought that.
Yes.
Upasna
And
Thakur is a
so
crier.
in our house we have a competition between her and our kid, who can cry more on very silly issues.
At the drop of a hat.
I'm a fairly sensitive person. So, but I don't cry at work. I mean, it's just my closed ones can make me cry for very silly things. I can feel bad, but at work,
So you're actually a softie.
Yeah, I'm actually a softie. So I can tell you that, see, this is a 21, around end of 21 is when, we didn't accomplish our first IPO attempt. So I was already very sad and upset. But more upsetting than that was, just a month or so later, I lost my father. All of a sudden, he was in the pink of his health and just had a heart attack in his sleep. And it took me more than a year to recover from that. So I am a softie. I think people close to me, can make me cry very easily.
Well, we hope that you never have to encounter tears, and we hope that the two of you continue to not just chase your ambition, but also ensure that your dreams are a reality. Thanks very much for sharing MobiKwik story, but also your life stories with us. And we wish the two of you the very best of luck. Appreciate you joining us here on Young Turks Reloaded. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this very interesting conversation with the team from MobiKwik. Lots of advice and nuggets there on living life, building a sustainable enterprise, but more importantly, chasing your ambition and your dreams. From all of us here on the team for now, many thanks for watching. Do stay tuned. There's a lot more coming up right here on CNBC TV 18. For more news and updates, all you need to do is follow CNBC TV 18 on all of our digital platforms.